Oh, hi. After finishing the first Mother game in the last video, I thought about Mother 2, also known as EarthBound in the States. EarthBound was released in Japan on August 27, 1994, and in the US on June 1st, 1995. In Japan, it sold 518,000 copies, becoming the 10th best-selling game of 1994, thanks Google. In the US, it sold 140,000 copies, which was a huge flop, which is potentially the reason Mother 3 never got released in the States. The only difference with gameplay from the last video is how random encounters are replaced by overworld sprites of enemies, which are less annoying, but annoying nonetheless. Huh, well I guess that's all I need to say before we get to the plot. The story starts with a meteor crashing just outside the town of Onet, which is the home of the protagonist Ness, who wakes up due to the explosion. After reaching where the meteor is located, you run into Porky, who goes by Pokey in the English release, but I will refer to him as Porky. After heading back to your house, your mom is standing out the door, telling you to go to bed. The game flashes forward to later that night, and you are woken up by a knocking at the door. The door opens and it's Porky, and he's there to tell you to go check on the meteor. After heading over there, you find Porky's brother Picky. Porky will hear a buzzing sound which causes the meteor to light up, which causes a fly named Buzz to fly down. Buzz tells the player about Gygus, who took over the world 10 years in the future. Gygus is the villain from the first game, who was Geek, who, after his defeat, came back and wanted to destroy all humans again. After heading back to get rid of Porky and his brother, you have a run-in with the Starman Jr., who gets defeated quickly using Buzz's PSI abilities. When you go to Porky's house, Porky's dad takes the two boys to their rooms and scolds them. In the Japanese version, it is implied he beats them, but I guess Nintendo of America didn't like that, so it was changed. After that, Porky's mom thinks Buzz is a dung beetle, so she swats him, which kills him. Going to him will start a cutscene where he gives a big speech I didn't read. He gives you the Sound Stone, which is important throughout the game. Leaving the house will start Ness's journey, starting with the sun rising. You head down to the main town of Onet, which you start by going to the arcade, which is run by the town gang, which you can stop by defeating their boss, Frank Fly, who also has a giant mechanical robot who, after defeating, ends the gang to beat his section. You probably need to be at level 7. After talking to the mayor, B.H. Perkle, he gives you the key to a shack which is northwest of the town. Using the key to the shack, you unlock a cave, which is the most annoying and grind-heavy portion of the game. Walking back out, a police officer will tell you to go back to the station. Anyway, after going to the station, you talk to the main guy, which has a very red face. He will take you to the back room, which has 5 police officers who, after fighting, will all run away after getting defeated. You then fight the main guy, which, after being defeated, will open the gates to the next town. You now enter the next town in the game, Tucson. First, you go to someone named Apple Kid, who has probably the best clay model. I even made him in real life. Anyway, after giving him a food item, he will ask for $200. I don't get why he needs $200, like he seems like the type of guy that would value food more than money. Anyway, after giving him the money, you go to the Polestar preschool and talk to a guy who says he's the father of a girl named Paula, and after he tries to go check on her, he finds out she is missing, which scares him a lot. Heading west, you reach Berglund Park, which has a guy named Everdred who, after fighting, tells you that Paula was kidnapped and is east of the town. Heading east, as he mentioned, you reach Peaceful Rest Valley, which is horrible. Remember how I said the zoo was horrible in the first game? This is worse, by a lot.
Yo, what's up, Onet Squad? I'm here in Peaceful Rest Valley.
Anyway, after getting to the end of the valley, you reach Happy Village, which has a drugstore, and that's it. After heading to a cave north of the town, you reach a rundown shack with a jail cell with Paula inside. She says that she was kidnapped by the Happiest and she saw Ness in her dreams, which is why she recognized him. She gives you the Franklin badge, which reflects all electric abilities, which will be helpful for the next boss. Speaking of the next boss, heading back to the town, you go to a big house which is in the middle of the village. After heading to the room to the left, you reach the Carpainter, which uses electric abilities which can be deflected by the Franklin badge. The boss isn't that tough, but if he doesn't use his electrical abilities as much, and he just uses his paint attacks, it can be tough. Defeating him will cause him to give you the key to the cell that Paula is locked in, which makes Paula the first permanent party member. Also, the whole cult of happyism is now over. Before joining you, she gets a teddy bear, which in most of my playthroughs just gets destroyed after 2 or 3 fights, but you can buy one at the Tucson department store. Anyway, after she joins you, you head to a cave west of the village, and you get to the second sanctuary guardian, Mondo Mole. Mondo Mole isn't that tough if you use paralysis instantly, which practically stops him from using physical attacks for the whole fight, although he can regenerate health with PSI. Defeating Mondo Mole would get you the second melody. Anyway, heading back to Tucson, you go to Paula's house. After heading to her dad, Paula is now allowed to go on with the story. Leaving will cause a guy who tells you Everdred wants to talk to Ness back at Berlin Park. After going there and talking with them, you get $10,000, which will be helpful for the next plot point. Going to the Chaos Theater and talking to the members of the Runaway Five, you get a backstage pass to their show. After going into the Chaos Theater building, you go to the showroom, which you can only get started by going backstage and leaving the room. I'm just going to play the whole show just to extend the video runtime, so here's the Runaway 5 live at the Chaos Theater. After that, you go to the room to the left, and after showing the Chaos Theater's owner the $10,000, he decides that the Runaway 5 can leave the Chaos Theater. The Runaway 5 then allow you to go on their bus they use for their band. They take you to the next town known as Threed, which is very literally a town that has zombies in it. After heading northwest, you reach two zombies which, according to the game, stare you over and stare into your soul. Well, I don't think that happens when I see zombies. How about I go find out? So I think I may have found a zombie. It might be right here. Anyway, you head back to the hotel, which has a girl which you follow, and after going to the room she walks to, there are a lot of ghosts and zombies which attack Ness and Paula. You black out and wake up in a pit, which after checking the door, you find out is locked. Paula then calls out with her mind to a boy named Jeff, who lives all the way in a cold place known as Winters, where you cut to Jeff in a bed sleeping, which he's awoken by Paula's message. You take control of him and get out of bed, and when you try to leave the room, you wake up Jeff's roommate and friend, Tony, which joins you. You head downstairs to a lab, which is one of Jeff's teachers who gives you a key which you can use on the lockers next door. Speaking of the lockers, after heading over there, you find out the key didn't work. After heading back, he will give you the bad key machine which works on all doors without a key. You then head outside and Tony will help Jeff jump over the gate, which is quite cartoonishly big. After getting over, you head to the store which is right outside the school. You go talk to a girl which tells you that you can buy the monkey at the entrance for $1, which you accept. After getting the monkey, you head south, which you will run into a campsite and an ocean. The campsite is run by people who believe in a sea creature named Tessie, which is an obvious parallel to the Loch Ness Monster, also known as Nessie. Going to the tent at the end will allow you to rest, which makes the game transition to the daytime. Heading to a ledge, the monkey will ask for a pack of gum, which you will use, and that will somehow summon Tessie, and it does. You get to ride Tessie all the way across the ocean, which will get you to a cave, which is the worst, most boring, annoying dungeon so far, because almost all the encounters are at a 100% rate of spawning. After getting through the dungeon, you run into Brick Road. Yes, that's his real name. He asks if the dungeon was too easy, but there is no prompt for yes or no. Anyway, heading south, you reach another cave, which is luckily not a dungeon. Later on in the cave, there is a rope which is not usable, but by giving the monkey the gum, he will fly up and under the rope which you climb. Leaving the cave, the monkey will see a girl monkey and will leave the party. After that, you will briefly pass by Stonehenge, which will be important later on in the game. Heading south more, you will reach Dr. Andonut's lab. Dr. Andonuts is Jeff's dad, who sent Jeff to a private school from earlier because he was smart. Talking to him will give you access to the Skyrunner, which lets Jeff fly all the way to Threed, which is where he crash lands at. You now have Jeff a part of the party, and you get to control Ness again. You can open the door with the bad key machine that Jeff has. After leaving, you go south of Threed and start a fight with a sentient tent. The fight isn't that hard if you use PSI Fire with Paula and a big bottle rocket with Jeff. After the fight, you get the jar of fly honey, which will be useful later. Heading north, Apple Kid will call you and tell you about an invention he created called zombie paper, which attracts zombies. After getting it, you place it in the circus, and now there is no use for the circus anymore. Anyway, after that, you head to the hotel and sleep. You then go to the segment from earlier with the 2 zombie guards, which is now open. You go down the ladder that they guarded, which has a cave. After a while, you run into a mini barf, which takes way too long to defeat, so make sure you grind enough beforehand. Going to the ladder that the mini barf was guarding, you reach the Grapefruit Falls. The spawn rates aren't that bad, but they can get annoying sometimes. Anyway, heading east, you reach Saturn Valley, which has the Mr. Saturns, which serve as mascots for the whole series. After leaving, you head north more, and you reach a waterfall which you have to stand without moving for 3 minutes straight, which feels like the longest 3 minutes ever. When the 3 minutes are over, you get into Belch's factory. The factory isn't that bad, but if you get a good spawn rate, it won't be that tough. At the end, you reach Master Belch, which is a big pile of, well, poop. You could completely stop him from fighting by giving him the jar of fly honey, which is useless after the fight. After the fight, you go forward and find out Belch took control of the Mr. Saturns, and defeating him means they are free from his control. You then go forward and reach the path to the Milky Well. At the end, you reach the next Sanctuary Guardian, the Trillionage Sprout, which is just Master Belch but brown. After defeating it, you get the 3rd melody. After that, you head all the way back to Threed, which no longer has ghosts and zombies. You get on a bus, which takes you to the next location, the Dusty Dunes Desert. In my opinion, I think that the desert is just as lame and boring as the Yucca Desert from the last game. Head northeast to end up in the Yucca Desert, which also has peak sound design, up there with Snowman. It does have some problems such as being boring, hard, and boring. So boring, in fact, that the creator, Shigesato Itoi, hid a message in the game stating it was his most boring part of the game, so I guess it wasn't just me who thinks that. Anyway, after the bus is stopped by a traffic jam, you have to walk across the desert manually, which gets annoying because anyone in the party at any time can get exhaustion, which slowly gives damage. Heading east, you reach a shack with some excavators who are digging for gold. Talking to the main guy, Gerardo Montaigu, he will ask you for food because he is exhausted from working. When you give him food, he will tell you that if he finds gold, he will let you know. After that, you head east more and eventually reach the metropolis of Fourside. Fourside is pretty much New York City, but a little smaller. Anyway, you head to the Topola Theater, which is where the Runaway Five are. After watching their show, you head back to Gerardo Montaigu, which after going there, you find a large crater. Heading down the ladder at the bottom, you find yourself in the Desert Gold Mine. This is probably the most annoying section because some of the enemies are way too powerful, so like the last video, grind, grind, grind. Anyway, the main thing to do down here is defeat the 5 moles, which all tell you they are the 3rd strongest mole. After defeating them and leaving back to Fourside, you get stopped halfway by Gerardo Montaigu's brother George. He has a diamond and gives it to you, which you can use at the Topola Theater. After heading there, you give the diamond to the person who runs the place, which will buy it off you for $50, which frees the Runaway 5 from Fourside. Although they do give one last show. Anyway, after that, you head to the department store. After leaving, the store will change color and Paula gets stolen. You are now locked in the store with Jeff only. Heading all the way upstairs, you encounter the department store spook, which can be defeated easily. Anyway, after that, you leave and go to the cafe. After leaving, you go to a crowd and see Everdred laying on the floor. Talking to him, he will say that there is a secret entrance in the back of the counter at the cafe. When he's done talking, he gets up and runs away. Going back in and checking there, you get transported to Moonside, which I see is just Fourside but rearranged in neon. After that, you talk to specific NPCs who teleport you. Eventually, you are teleported to a hotel, which you run into an invisible NPC which follows you around. You then head south and reach the Monotoli building, which has a statue guarding the door called the Manny Manny statue, which all I have to say about it is that it makes people become evil. I should not have this. Anyway, after defeating it, you get teleported back. Apple Kid then calls and saying that he invented a yogurt dispenser. After leaving the cafe, a monkey will tell you that the monkey caves are open at the desert. Heading there will get you to what I see as the reason why inventory space is too small and tough to organize. Anyway, at the end you get the gourmet yogurt machine, and a monkey will teach you how to use teleport. After heading back to Fourside, you talk to a worker at the Monotoli building, which takes the yogurt machine and allows you to go to the secret elevator to the upper floors of the building. Going there, you have to battle your way through security robots, which are somewhat annoying to deal with. After getting far enough, you run into the clumsy robot, which during the fight gets defeated by the Runaway Five after they barge in and destroy it. Heading forward more, you reach the office of Monotoli himself, which had Paula captive, but after you destroyed the Manny Manny statue, he no longer was evil, so he gives Paula back and apologizes and tells you to go to Summers by using his helicopter. Going to his helicopter, you see Porky flying away with it, which eliminates that plan. After heading all the way down, you get into the Runaway Five's bus and drive back to Threed. You then go back to the landing area of Jeff, where two different guys will be examining the wreckage, but Jeff is able to fire it back up and land it back in Winters at Dr. Randonut's lab. After that, you head north to the cave from earlier and fight the 4th Sanctuary Guardian, Shroom, which is easy, and after defeating you get the 4th Melody. Heading back to the lab, you get back on the Skyrunner and crash land on the endless tourist trap, Summers. Right now we are, according to the most results on the first page of Google, midway through the game. Unlike last time, I decided to talk about the many samples and inspiration the team used while writing the music. First off, let's start with the character name screen track named Your Name Please, which samples the intro to Monty Python's Flying Circus. Next is the Sound Zone's background noise, which is sampled from John Lennon's Give Peace a Chance.
1, 2, 3, 4.
After that, there is a little bit of a spoiler for later with Megaton Walk, which samples Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, more specifically the reprise version. Another spoiler is with The Cliff That Time Forgot, which samples All You Need Is Love, also by the Beatles. One last one is The Cave of the Past, which samples Daydre by the Beach Boys. Well, that's all I got for now. Anyway, after arriving at Summers, you go east to a house, which after talking to the guy who lives there, he gives you the number for reserving spots at the Stoic Club, which is very expensive. After getting the number and leaving, Tony calls you and asks for the player's name. When he hangs up, you reserve a spot and head over to the Stoic Club. The only thing there is a big rock and a huge crowd. One of them tells you about how one of the girls there used to make magic cakes and quit because nobody bought them. After talking to her, she decides to open it back up, and when you go buy one from her, You doze off and have a dream about a place called the Lam, which is where the game takes you. You then get control of the next party member, Pooh. As Pooh, you go to a mountain and start meditating. A weird head thing then flies down and says he is Pooh's ancestor and will help him complete his training. He starts by ripping off his legs. Yikes. Then takes away his arms, then his eyes, then his ears. He then says he is left with only his mind. He proceeds to take that, and then you wake up back as Pooh, and then he teleports to Ness, and Pooh becomes the last permanent party member. You then go to the museum, and after heading upstairs, you see an exhibit. Pooh points out that they should go to Scaraba, which is a desert. After leaving, at the front room of the museum, there is a phone ringing, and after picking it up, a man named Mr. Spoon at the Forsyth Museum says that there is something crazy there. Heading there, you see a door guarded by a guy, which says that he will only open it if you get him something signed by the performer Venus, who performs at the Topola Theater. You then head there, and after seeing her show, the guard lets you through because you knew the Runaway Five, and after getting in, Venus will sign a banana peel. I can only imagine Venus as basically the EarthBound equivalent of Taylor Swift, at least in my opinion. I think I should sell this for $1 million. Anyway, after going back and giving him the banana, you get access to the Four-Side Sewers. After getting through it, you reach the 5th Sanctuary Guardian, the Playground of Doom. Not a tough fight if you're at a good level, but after defeating it, you get the 5th Melody. In the same room as the 5th Melody is also a carrot key that can be used in Dalam. After heading to Dalam, you use it on the 3 rabbit statues, which are guarding a cave entrance, which has the 6th Sanctuary Guardian, Thunder and Storm. When you defeat it, you get the 6th Melody. Anyway, after convincing a boat rider to sail to Scaraba, you run into the Kraken in the ocean, which isn't that tough to fight. After the fight, you get to Scaraba, which is another desert, which is as bad and boring as all the other deserts so far. You then run into a statue which looks like the Sphinx, and after solving a riddle, the pyramid above it will open. The pyramid is pretty boring, but not that bad besides the enemies. After dropping down from a tomb, you get the Hawkeye, which will be helpful later. When you get out of the pyramid, you run into Pooh's mentor, which takes Pooh away because Pooh is learning a new PSI ability. Heading north, you run into a native of the area, which gives a key, which is helpful for a building named Dungeon Man. After heading north more, you use the key on Dungeon Man and enter it. It's a dungeon which is boring and dumb, but the music is okay. At some point, you run into Brick Road from all the way back in Winters, and he says that he had Dr. Andonuts make him Dungeon Man, and he lives in it forever. After that, you can escape, and Dungeon Man will join your party temporarily. Heading south, Dungeon Man will get caught in between 2 trees. He then tells you that he has a submarine which can be used for the deep darkness. Going back in, you reach the submarine, which is a reference to the Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. Ah! Why? Why would they do that? It's the millionth Beatle reference in this game. It's really getting annoying. Anyway, after getting in the submarine, you reach the deep darkness, which is just a swamp. After a while, you reach a large blacked out area you can brighten up with the Hawkeye. Eventually, you run into a large pile of poop, which says that he's the return of Belch named Master Barf. Midway through fighting him, Pooh sweeps in and uses his new ability, PSI Starstorm, which instantly defeats Barf. After that, you head north more and reach the Tenda village, which is full of little greenish men who are too shy to talk to you. Leaving the cave, Apple Kid calls and he said he's working with Dr. Andonuts, but after telling you about the eraser, he gets stolen by something. Orange Kid, which I kinda forgot to talk about, calls you right after asking you to get a book called Overcoming Shyness, which he wants to borrow from Apple Kid. After that, you head to Winters and get the eraser from Andonut's lab, which you can use after going down a secret hole, which gets you to Stonehenge base, which is really annoying and tough to get through. Anyway, getting through it, you eventually run into the Starman Deluxe, which is just a Starman with spikes on it. Defeating him will free Apple Kid and Dr. Andonuts, which he kidnapped. After talking to Apple Kid, he will tell you that he left the Overcoming Shyness book at the Onet Library. Going to the Onet Library, you find the book is somewhere on the bookshelf that you must find. Eventually, you find the book on the shelf and take it. You then head back to the deep darkness instead of giving Orange Kid the book, and after you give it to the Tendas, they stop being shy and will open up an entrance that's under a large boulder and will be the entrance to another dungeon. After getting through the dungeon, you reach the 7th Sanctuary Guardian, Electro Spectre, which as the name implies, uses electric abilities. After defeating it, you drop down to the area with the 7th Melody and then drop down more to reach the Lost Underworld. The Lost Underworld's only gimmick is that the whole party is small and all the enemies are huge and big dinosaurs. Anyway, after heading southeast, you reach the Fire Spring. The Fire Spring is full of psychic psychos and soul-consuming flames. After heading to the top, you reach the 8th and final Sanctuary Guardian, Carbon Dog. Midway through the fight, Carbon Dog gives off, as the game says, rainbow colors and then turns into Diamond Dog, which doesn't really change how the fight goes. After defeating it, you get the 8th and final melody. The Soundstone then automatically opens and plays the full melody. You then get transported to a flashback of Ness's home when he was a baby when he was getting named. I think this scene is some form of symbolism, but I forgot, and I don't know, so I guess it could mean something. Heading west, you see Porky, which is there, I guess. You then head north to go to the shack with the Flying Men, which were there in the first game, but are more helpful here. Heading east, you head deeper into Ness's conscious, which has enemies which are really stupid and random. Eventually, you reach the end and transport to the Sea of Eden, which is full of Kraken from earlier, which by this point aren't that tough. You then run into a statue that looks like the Manny Manny statue, which says it's Ness's nightmare, and then it fights you. The fight is really tough and boring, even with cheats, so get as much items that restore PSI as you can. Eventually, after defeating it, your inner conscious tells you you go to the Saturn Valley. Then you wake up surrounded by the other party members and then teleport to Saturn Valley. Andonuts and Apple Kid are both there, and they are working on the phase distorter, which can get the player to Gygus to defeat him. You then try to use it, and it fails to even move, and you walk out looking charred up. Andonuts then tells you that you need to get Zexonite from Meteor. The only meteor that's in the game is the meteor in Onet, which you then teleport to. Onet is dark out, and there are enemies all over the place. You then get to the meteor and get a piece of Zexonite from it, and you then teleport back to Saturn Valley. After giving the Zexonite to Dr. Andonuts, he then tells you to lie down while him and Apple Kid work on the phase distorter. After doing that, you then talk to Andonuts, which says it's ready to use. Going in it, you get teleported to the cliff that time forgot, which Andonuts says is where the location Gygus was at in the past. Andonuts also admits that in order to send the party to the past, he has to put their souls in robots and get them there. After he turns the party to robots, you then go to the phase distorter and teleport to the Cave of the Past, which a lot of people think is really off-putting, but I don't think so. After heading north, you reach a room which looks very fleshy and off-looking. Heading north more in the room, you run into Porky, which is in some weird spider-like machine. You then fight him with Gygus in the background, which is basically just a reflection of Ness's face. The music is also really good, by the way. After a while, Porky will basically admit defeat and turn off the devil machine, which is what Gygus was in. Gygus then breaks out and looks a little spooky. You then fight him one by one. After a while, Porky will drop back in and will start blabbering about time and how he can't be defeated, which will take the fight into its second phase and well. The only way of getting through the fight is by having Paula pray. After praying once, the fight will go into its third phase, which is worse. First off, I'm honestly impressed that the SNES is even able to display this segment, because even on the re-release of the game, the screen can get really messed up and even burned in at times by how rapidly and fast it goes. Anyway, after Paula runs out of people to pray to, she prays to the player, you, yes you, to pray for her. After that happens, Porky pops in and he says he's running away to another timeline, and he does. Then, Gygus evaporates completely and the screen cuts to the outside of the entrance to the room, with the party as robots all disheveled and visibly destroyed looking. The game then shows a text box saying, "The war on Gygus is over." You might be wondering, are they dead? Well, no, not one bit. The souls of all the party then float out and go all the way back to their bodies in the modern day. The whole party then wakes up, and Pooh then says that he needs to go back to Dalan to use the experience on the journey for the good of his country. He then teleports away. Jeff then tells you he will study more on things and can fix things anytime for Ness and Paula. Paula then tells you that she would like you to escort her home. You then teleport to Tucson too, as she asked, escort her to her home, the Polestar preschool. You then teleport to Tucson and head home. Talking to Ness's mom, she will tell you to lie down and tell her all about the journey that you just had. In conclusion, I think EarthBound is truly the best game ever, and I hope you did too. It has its problems, yes, but regardless of gameplay problems, it is a really good story, and if you think someone would enjoy it, share it with them. I kinda don't know how to end this, but
I forgot to talk about merch. Wait.